Between piles of homework, the never-ending reports to write, and a dozen back-to-back rehearsals of Christmas carols on the godforsaken piano, the weekend was a blur, ended too quickly to recall. For Haruna, the return to school after the 2-day hiatus felt, ironically, like a breath of fresh air. But a new week meant new priorities. She barreled through the halls, ready to begin. Haruna, what the hell? Or not. Chapter 4. She turned sharply. Oh, Tracy, hey, Haruna said, voice trailing but sounding sweet to mask her impatience. Why are you in such a hurry? Tracy's face was set in a scowl. It was clear that she was out of breath from chasing her down the hall. Didn't you see me waving? Oh gosh, I'm sorry, Haruna giggled, placing a hand on her chest as the two continued through the hall together. I'm supposed to meet with student council before first period. You sure are busy. You rushed out on Friday, too. Well, there was church stuff. Also, Manny and I. Oh, right. Of course, Manny again. You know we only ever get to see each other on the weekends. Yeah, but ever since you got the boyfriend, you've barely had time for the rest of us. I mean, I get it. Manny is the perfect guy and everything, but what about your friends? To be fair, Tracy wasn't wrong. Haruna had chosen the boyfriend over her friends many times, but for Haruna, seeing her best friends outside of school had always been rare. Tracy had private tutoring to keep her grades up, though her real talent was in performing arts. Between tutoring, she was busy with school plays in the drama club. Angelique often volunteered when she wasn't working a part-time job she didn't need, but her parents insisted she have. And Gabrielle, Haruna's oldest, closest friend, was into dressage. She was often in horseback riding competitions or away at the stables. In other words, spare time didn't exist, which, by the way, totally sucked. But it wasn't like Haruna was choosing who she loved most. Her friends just didn't understand. Is that jealousy I hear? Of course I'm jealous. Perfect boyfriend and grades? I don't know how you even do it. And speaking of which, how about that homework over the weekend? I think Dryer is actually trying to kill us. Haruna gave a slight shrug as she fumbled with her lock. Miss Dryer is a good teacher. It's her job to make things challenging. Wouldn't be work if it were easy, right? Tracy groaned loudly, opening her locker door with so much force it clanged against the neighboring one. Spoken like a true teacher's pet. I bet you'll be the only one who gets so much as a B in that class. Just watch. Haruna never gets less than an A. Huh? Chimed a girl, her North Face book bag slung over one shoulder as she approached the pair with casual footsteps. Jelly! You know you shouldn't talk. You're just as bad. Angelique, nicknamed Jelly among their circle of friends. Angelique gave an affectionate pat to Tracy's head, and her eyes set on Haruna. Well, it's not like I'm on honor roll for everything. Pretty much just math. That English test we came out of on Friday ruined me, I think. Of course, head girl Haruna is a different case altogether. Oh my gosh, but Gels, your boyfriend is gorgeous too! Huh? Is this a conversation about boyfriends or school? Ugh, both! Tracy moaned. Honestly, if it wasn't for Elle still being single, I'd be a major third wheel here. 7th, actually, Angelique corrected before looking curiously about. Where is Elle, anyway? Didn't she say something about Seth? Haruna froze. Seth? As in Seth Jordan? I thought about flat out asking him, unless he's waiting for prom to tell her, but that's ages away. Ask him what? Haruna interjected, trying to sound casual but not feeling remotely casual about Seth and Gabrielle being mentioned together in the same sentence. If he likes her, Elle thinks so. It's kind of obvious by now. Haruna busied herself with unloading textbooks into her locker. She must have heard wrong. A conversation about Seth liking her best friend was an awful way to start the morning. Besides, Gabrielle couldn't like him back, because that would be a disaster. Do you think he'll ask her out? What? A single notebook tumbled to the floor. Haruna scrambled to pick it up, and she offered a stiff smile, then a shrug. Really? No opinion at all? Nope, none. Haruna slammed the locker shut and snapped closed the lock. Anyway, I'm running late. If you see Elle, tell her I said hi. Haruna turned and sped down the hall. By midday, the cafeteria was packed, and Haruna was relieved to slip through and beat the long line for the last of the daily special. She scanned over the many rows of tables for a certain someone. Her face lit up, spotting a familiar head of strawberry blonde. Hi, Elle, Haruna said breathlessly. Gabrielle looked up and her face broke into a grin. There you are. Thanks for saving a seat. It wasn't easy, trust me. Oh, here they come. Angelique and Tracy moved to sit on the other side, moving the book bag Gabrielle had used to secure their spots. That day, they had opted out of school lunches to bring their own. That looks so good, Angelique sighed, watching as Tracy uncovered a container filled with a colorful mix of stews and flatbread. Yep, and as you know, Mom makes the best naan in all the Lower Mainland. Angelique shook her head. Seems amazing compared to this boring sandwich I just threw together this morning. But hey, it's Monday. Haruna peered over at Angelique's sandwich, a rye bread with questionable contents. Meatless, right? Angelique was always claiming she would become a vegetarian, but it was obvious that was never happening. Angelique shrugged. So, you were telling us before the weekend, Tracy started, shifting topics. About, you know. Haruna stopped mid-bite. This must have been a discussion she had missed when she had rushed out to meet Manny on Friday. She noticed Gabrielle had turned bright red. Seth left a note in my locker to meet him after school today. I think he's going to ask me out. The four girls fell silent as their eyes searched the cafeteria, then landed on the group of boys who occupied a lunch table in the far corner by a vending machine. Seth sat at the very end of it, his grin on display as though listening in on an amusing joke. Among them was Ryu Debiru. Haruna shuddered, recalling their last interaction with loathing. You actually like him? Gabrielle gave a weak nod. Well, he's kinda cute, and he's pretty funny. Funny looking. Haruna searched for a reaction from the others. Angelique seemed deep in thought as she started on a carton of organic almond milk. I guess he is kind of cute, in an awkward sort of way. His freckles are cute. What's so special about freckles? I have them. They're kind of annoying, Haruna countered. Tracy gave a wry stare. But even Manny has freckles, doesn't he? Tall, dark hair, freckles, gray eyes. You and Elle have similar taste. Please don't compare Seth to Manny. Manny is a beautiful man, Haruna scoffed. He's also taller. Tracy shook her head. Better not speak ill of His Majesty Emmanuel in the presence of his lady. It's Emmanuel, not Emmanuel. He's French. Half, anyway. Is he even French if his mother is from Quebec? Jelly is probably more French than he is. Second-gen Haitian from Ontario? Hardly. And I can barely hold a conversation beyond bonjour. Okay, let's not debate how French people are, Haruna said, renewing her focus on Gabrielle. I'm still in shock over your little announcement over here. Seth's really not that bad. He's kind of a jerk sometimes, I think. But he does seem like a nice guy overall, Angelique agreed. Haruna didn't like the tone of any of this. Angelique hadn't been at their school as long as the others, so it was expected that she might be casual about such things. But Gabrielle had known Seth since the start of grade 7, just as Haruna did. So, okay, Haruna might have caught them over the years stealing shy glances at each other. She had written it off as a tiny crush and Seth being a weirdo. Turns out, Haruna had it all wrong. Gabrielle didn't just like Seth, she liked Seth. Haruna knew the girl could be naive, but shouldn't have been blind. A nice guy? I'm pretty sure most of the guys he hangs out with have been suspended. Twice! I've heard he's always in detention. And just look at him. He's high. All of the time. She gestured towards their table, where Seth was now throwing back his head in a fit of barking laughter. She was certain he was enjoying himself way too much. Nothing could be that funny. I don't think he's stupid, anyhow. He's in my calculus class. Maybe the way he acts around his friends is just a facade. You know, groupthink? Gabrielle's eyes gleamed. See? I knew it! But then as suddenly as she had cried out, her shoulders slumped, and she dropped her elbows onto the table to sink her face into her palms. Oh, I can't wait until after school. He's dropped so many hints. I wish he would just do it now. Ugh, then what are you waiting for? Why don't you just do it yourself? Gabrielle recoiled, eyes rounded in terror. Oh my gosh, no way, I couldn't. Tracy's eyes twinkled with a mischievous sparkle they had all seen at least once before. It was an omen to what was bound to happen next. She launched to her feet. Fine, if you won't do it, I'll drag him over here. Gabrielle clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle her squeal, eyes bulging. She waved, frantic for Tracy to come back. Tracy was off, zipping over to the other side of the cafeteria to Seth's table. Oh, jeez, Haruna sighed. The grins and laughter faded as Tracy approached the group of 6, some of the boys nudging some of the others. Tracy tapped Seth on the shoulder. He turned to her with a blank face. Angelique was soundless, brimming with anticipation like a journalist about to land the story of the year. Gabrielle gawked, her face now resembling a hothouse tomato. Haruna watched helplessly as Seth and Tracy spoke. He looked over. Gabrielle squawked. She turned and shrunk in her seat as if it were possible to vanish through the floors. He's coming over. He is? Gabrielle brought her hands over her face, quivering, appearing uncertain whether to turn back or remain faced away. What is he doing? Does he look mad? Haruna groaned. She wasn't about to stick around for whatever ridiculous teen soap opera was about to play out next. This was Shady Glen Academy, not Degrassi High. Where are you going? Angelique asked. My locker. The bell will ring soon. I'll see you in 5th period. Haruna glanced at Gabrielle with a forced smile. Good luck. Seth was steps away from the table along with Tracy. Haruna swept away, heels clacking as she crossed the cafeteria and left through the double doors. At her locker, she fixed everything out of place. Her slumped ponytail, her eyeliner, the collar of her shirt, her crooked necktie. She checked her phone. 8 minutes left until the first bell. Well, with this much time, might as well be early. Alexis and Samantha came down the hall, heading in the opposite direction as Haruna turned at the corner. Alexis greeted her. Haruna chimed back. These girls were in her 2nd period class. How do you think you did on that test? It was brutal, eh? Samantha said. Haruna twirled her face them, giggling, oh, well, I finished early. Alexis and Samantha gave each other impressed looks and laughed. Alexis's grin revealed her glittering braces. Ugh, Haruna did not miss wearing those. I forgot I was talking to you, Haruna. Of course, you totally aced it, as usual, Alexis teased. Bell's going to ring soon. See you later, girl, said Samantha, fluttering her fingers. Haruna tittered a goodbye, and they resumed the trek to class. The social ritual ended. But something strange happened. Haruna had moved off quickly. Too quickly. And the floor was extra slick. Her shoes slid. Haruna shrieked, and then she was down on the cold, hard, wet floor, pain shooting up her spine as she glided forward like a hockey puck. Her books, her notes, everywhere. Grumbling under her breath and praying no one saw, Haruna scrambled on all fours to retrieve everything. She had all but her pencil case. Then she heard the laughter. That looked like it hurt, someone said. So pink is her color, eh? Said another. I admit the lace is a nice touch. Haruna felt her inside squirm. Her skirt must have flared when she'd fallen. How embarrassing. But worse, how disgusting for them to... Wait. No. Not them. What a mess, remarked the third boy. Haruna lifted her head, feeling her heart and body tremble. It was exactly who she suspected. The usual gang of slackers and stoners, all standing in a tiny mob in front of an adjacent row of lockers. How? How had she managed to run into them again like this? 3 short days and it was happening again. Towering over her was the dusty-haired blonde with wide-set eyes, that Chinese exchange student with the British accent. The other, a kind of beefy guy with 2 thick eyebrows and acne scars. Some other guy with dyed hair and a year-round tan. And of course, the one to shame all others, the messy-haired, ever-silent Ryu Debiru. Seth wasn't among them, likely still in the process of wooing and being seduced by Gabrielle. Haruna couldn't focus on any of that. She now knew where her pencil case had gone. Right at their feet. To make matters worse, it hadn't been closed all the way. Everything was everywhere, scattered. Haruna swallowed hard. She didn't anticipate the humiliation she knew would follow. The task of recovering all of it on her hands and knees while they stood like spectators. Yo, aren't you going to pick up your stuff? The blonde asked, a stupid grin plastered on his face. Hey Tim, you should help her. You're the one who spilled your drink over there, said the exchange student, prodding the blonde with his elbow. Tim looked as though he was considering it, but Haruna didn't want to entertain their antics for a second more. She was pretty sure he was the same pervert who had been brazen enough to comment on her underwear. Get a life. Haruna lifted herself and marched over. She stooped for her pencil case, her pens, her eraser. It was just her luck that the first bell would ring at that moment. Classroom doors flung open, and those inside spilled out while those who were on lunch flooded the hallways. Haruna stiffened, feeling a bout of hives erupt along her back. The wandering eyes and whispers of passing students were on her as she continued the mortifying act of what looked like crawling, groveling at their feet. Haruna's eye twitched. Was that a flash? Had one of those creeps actually taken a picture? The optics of this is pure gold, murmured the one with the dyed hair who was in the process of returning his cell phone to his pocket. Well, I'm out. Later, head girl. The boys came to a unanimous agreement with grunts and guffaws like a troop of chimps, and Haruna felt a flood of relief as she watched their feet pivot and reflections fade away. She exhaled. At last, she had everything, books in her left arm and case in right. Then Haruna flinched, near dropping them all over again. Her heart catapulted against her ribcage. Like a phantom before her, she was face to face with Ryu. Her mouth fell as his eyes bore back into hers. The others had left. Why hadn't he? What are you doing? She assembled a mask of annoyance to hide the fright he'd actually given her.
You missed something.
He lifted an arm. A small pink L-shaped pouch swung between his fingers. Her inhaler. It had fallen out of her pencil case. She'd dropped it, forgotten it, missed it, and now, blinded by a rush of embarrassment she couldn't comprehend, Haruna hurtled towards him. Can't see it. Not him. Anyone but him. He pushed away from the wall, easily dodging her. Don't touch my stuff! Short of grasping it, Ryu drew his arm back. Then he let it fall. Haruna's eyes followed the pouch as it clattered to the floor. He didn't. He couldn't have just. She caught a hint of a smirk as he strutted by her and pocketed his hands. What is wrong with you? Haruna shrieked. This time she didn't care who noticed or overheard them. Ryu stopped dead in his tracks. His voice emanated with a tone as cool and clear as a night sky.
You don't understand, huh? It's what I hate the most about people like you. You said not to touch, right? So I thought it would be better if you pick it up yourself.
At that moment, the second bell sounded. Haruna would be officially late for class. And yet, her thoughts were muddled, her ears suddenly deaf and body numb to its chime. She stared after Ryu as he swaggered off. Things like this didn't happen to her. She was nice to everyone. She was respected and loved. She was an honor student. She was head girl! Forcing herself to withhold the tears that were sure to come, Haruna sunk down to retrieve the pouch with stiff limbs, glowering as his form disappeared around a corner. She hated him. She hated him when he was quiet, when he watched her with that mean, analyzing gaze. Hated that he was so passive most times, but when he acted so callously, like cruelty came naturally. After all of this, he had only reaffirmed what she knew she hated about him most of all. His words.